Hello, everyone. My name is Sebastian, and welcome back to the Storytelling Podcast here on 93.5 FM KWDC Delta College Radio. Before we go any further, I would just like to mention that for this episode and the one that came before it, this is mostly my perspective on how to write stories. This is the themes and ideas that I usually keep for my storytelling. Everyone's way of storytelling is going to be different, so I'm just letting you all know now. You don't need to listen to this 100% exact, but you could take inspiration from it for how you guys tell your own stories. In the last episode, we focused on how to write characters. That one I thought was a good episode to start off on because you really do need characters in a story. But now we're going to be taking a look at the second most important thing that I believe should be in every story is the world building. World building is important for a story because it creates a believable and immersive setting that grounds the characters, the plot, and the events. A well-developed world helps the readers understand the rules, the culture, the history of the story's environment, making the story feel consistent and authentic. Without it, even compelling characters or plot twists can feel unconvincing or disconnected to your audience, whereas rich and detailed worlds enhance tension, stakes, and emotional investment, allowing the readers or the listeners or viewers, I guess you could say, to fully lose themselves in the narrative. So without any further delay, let's move on to the second episode of the Storytelling Podcast with How to World Build. To start, you're going to need the geography and the setting of your world. Finding the location of where your story takes place is vital. It gives your readers or your audience a visual and emotional anchor for the world. Geography sets the stage for your story's tone, your story's culture, and even the conflicts. So with that said, you're going to need to include the physical layouts like what are the continents and the regions that define your political or cultural borders? Are there islands, archipelagos, or floating land masses that influence travel and isolation? Are there cities, villages, fortresses, and ruins to mark civilization and history? Are there going to be forests? Are there going to be jungles, wastelands that offer resources or dangers? Oceans, rivers, lakes that shape trade, warfare, and mythology? Deserts, mountains, tundras, and plains that influence how people live? Natural landmarks that define identities such as volcanoes, crystal caves, glowing trees, endless waterfalls, or floating islands? Things like that is what you're going to have to describe for a physical layout, but in addition to the physical layout, you're going to have world details to consider with all that. For some examples, let's start off with the terrain. Is your terrain going to be harsh and unforgivable, or lush and fertile? Does it affect architecture and agriculture? What is the climate going to be like? Do certain regions suffer drought, blizzards, or magical storms? You have to consider the scale. Is your world massive with multiple continents or confined to a single city or planet? You have to have influence on the culture. How does geography affect how people dress, what they eat, or even how they build homes? Travel and exploration could also really help in this category of world details. There are roads, are there airships, are there teleportation gadgets, or are there beasts used for transportation? The way that you could connect all of this with geography and a setting would be by this example. A desert civilization will rely on water as wealth and survival, while the world among the islands might depend on trade, sailing, and storms. Geography is not just a backdrop, it's something that shapes everything that lives upon it. Now, with the geography and the setting out of the way, you're going to have to give your world a bit of history. You're going to have to give it a bit of lore. A well-defined story gives your world a height and it gives it purpose. It helps the audience understand how the present came to be. You're going to have to talk about the major past events that shaped the world, like were there great wars that renewed kingdoms and empires, natural disasters that changed landscapes or wiped out civilizations, founding myths that explain how the world or its people came to exist, golden ages of prosperity followed by collapse or even corruption, legendary heroes, gods, villains, or artifacts that echo throughout time. In addition to history and lore, you have to build your world's timeline. Like, for example, when did civilization begin? Who were the first rulers, the first conquerors, or the first explorers? What cataclysmic or revolution changes happened in your world that changed the world forever? Which stories are fact and which stories are mythologies? Lore adds mystery and it adds depth. You can include things like the ruins that your heroes explore were once someone's home. The relic they find might have belonged to some forgotten god. Every story is stronger when the world feels older than its characters, which is why you need the history and the lore for your world. In a way, world building is technically like writing a story for a character, but this time the character is the world that you're set in. Following the history and the lore, you're going to need to next build out the culture and the society of your world. Cultures bring souls to your world. It shows how people live, how they love, how they celebrate, how they even survive. You're going to need to include elements of the culture, like, for example, traditions, the holidays, the celebrations unique to each person. You're going to have to include the customs of this world, like, for example, how people greet one another, what gestures do each person have, the family structures, or the rites of passage. Is there art in this world? Is there music in this world? What type of food do they eat? The fashion choices of each person, the architecture that reveals values and creativity in these people. What are the laws? What is sacred or forbidden in this world? What's the education like? What's the storytelling like? And what is the oral histories that preserve the past? In addition to elements of the culture, you have to give some examples of the culture itself, like, for example, the holidays. Are you going to have St. Patrick's Day, Day of the Dead, Halloween? Or are you going to make newly invented ones, like Festival of the Eternal Suns or something like that? What's the social structure going to look like? How are people treated by status, by gender, age, or power? What's the behavior that you're going to see with people? Do people bow? Do they clasp hands or exchange charms when greeting each other? Culture defines personality, it defines emotion in your world. It shows how ordinary lives carry meaning, even in the grandest adventures that you were to tell. Now, with the cultures and the society out of the way, you're going to have to show the government and the power systems of your world. Every world that you're going to be creating has to have some form of order, even if that order is sadly chaos. Understanding how power works gives structure to your story, and it gives structure to the society in those stories. For a couple of questions that you're going to have to ask yourself is, who holds the power in this world, and how is it earned, or how is it taken? Is it a monarchy? Is it a council, a democracy, a theocracy, a tribe, or total anarchy? How are the laws enforced? What is considered justice or what is considered a crime? Are there rebellions or secret factions challenging authority? What does leadership look like at home? What does it look like for the mother, the father, the elders, or a communal ruler? For some examples of power systems, in a kingdom, you'll be ruled by a bloodline or a divine right. In a tribe, it is usually led by strength, wisdom, or tradition. For councils, it is about balancing diverse voices and interests. A theocracy is basically built on faith as a law, with divine or prophetic rule. In the case of chaos, power is earned only through the might of fear. Power often shapes every conflict, from royal intrigue to village disputes. Even the smallest households reflect the same struggle of control and hierarchy as nations do. Moving on from the government and the power systems of the world, the next thing that you're going to need to include, and I know that this part might be a little controversial for some people, but you have to include some form of religion or beliefs. Religion and beliefs give moral and spiritual meaning to your world, whether that would be divine or philosophical. Before moving further, I would like to give context as to why I mentioned that religion could be a bit of a controversial topic, and that's mainly just for how it's portrayed in whatever story you're telling. I would highly recommend doing your research on any form of religion, whether that would be Christianity, Judaism, or even Catholicism. Atheism, I guess, could technically count as one. But I would recommend doing your research, because if you get something wrong about the religion that you're making a story of or including in your story, and other people see that there's false information, they're going to either be upset or speak out about it. So I would recommend just to do your research before including it into whatever story you're going to be writing for your world. Some of the key aspects that you're going to want to include are things like, are gods, spirits, or cosmic forces the ruler of existence. How many do they interact with mortals through miracles, curses, or silence? Do people worship throughout temples, throughout nature, throughout personal rituals? Are there holy wars, forbidden cults, or sacred relics? Faith can divide kingdoms, it could unite nations. Even worlds without gods may have strong philosophies, logic and science, or fate. Belief gives purpose for better or for worse, usually. And going back to my earlier point that I had mentioned just recently, this is probably one of, if not the most important thing that you're going to have to research when it comes to telling a story, because to some people, religion it's no joke, so you would have to write it in a way where it's not only interesting for most people, but it's also true to those said religions. And just like how I briefly touched upon earlier, pretty sure that atheism is just people who don't really have a belief, they believe in nothing. Atheism would just be a normal person that just has no beliefs of, let's say, the heaven or hell. They don't believe in spiritual beings. They just believe in what they are right now, and whatever they choose to believe what comes afterwards is their belief. Following religion and beliefs, the next thing that you're going to want to focus on is the economy and resources that the people have. The economy fuels daily life, what people need, what they make, and what they usually fight for. Some world building questions that you could ask in this topic is, how do people survive in this world? Are they farmers on a farm, farming for crops or taking care of their cattle? Are they down in the mines, getting valuable riches that might be down there? Are they out at sea fishing for fish to feed other people? Are they trading things in a market, for example? Or perhaps is there some form of magic that is keeping these guys alive and keeping them alive for survival? You're going to have to ask yourself what resources are rare and which are sacred in this world. For example, what's the status of gold? What's the status of silver, bronze, copper, any valuable? Even a diamond could be considered a rare, sacred resource to some people. You're also going to need to ask yourself, how does the currency work in this world? Are there coins that are in place of money? Is there paper money? Is there, let's say, a credit or a debit card? Are there crystals that people trade? Or is there energy that people trades if it's like a magical thing? Or is there like iron bars that you give to other people? Heck, maybe you could even do something like in Minecraft where you just trade villagers for emeralds and other items. Well, goods are traded between regions or worlds. For example, you're going to have to be paying some money if you're going to be getting some tropical fruit that's not grown in your area, like either a coconut, a pineapple, or even bananas. Another thing you would trade for in the money aspect would be materials. For example, you would either get oil from a different country or you would get metals from a different country to make something here in our country. Are there economic classes or guilds controlling the wealth that's in this world? An example I can give for economy and resources, specifically in the context that I just spoke of, a society rich with magic crystals have vastly different industries than one thriving on iron and steel. You could also give examples like scarcity creates tension and ambience breeds corruption. Okay, everyone, I hope you're having a good time on the second episode of the Storytelling Podcast. We are going to be taking a short little break right now. We'll be right back after these messages.
Most people out here think that taking care of one another is important. And most people would step up for a neighbor going through a tough time. Most people around here help out friends and family when they need it. But the funny thing is, most of us won't look for help when we need it. If you're struggling with mental health, you should know that there are resources out there that can help. And it's okay to talk about it if you need to. One place to get started with information is loveyourmindtoday.org. Loveyourmindtoday.org offers a range of guides, instructions, and insights for dealing with difficult situations or getting through a tough time. If you're struggling with mental health, get the help you need, because most people out here really care. Visit loveyourmindtoday.org. That's loveyourmindtoday.org. Brought to you by the Huntsman Mental Health Institute and the Ad Council.
You said you'd never buy your kid candy from the checkout aisle. Or forget extra diapers. And never give in to a meltdown. You'd never lick your thumb to clean their face. Never let them have too much screen time. And never bribe them for just one more bite. You say you'd never let them out in public without their hair brushed. Never, ever become a minivan mom. And you'd never give them your phone for a quiet dinner.
Calling boss work phone.
So when you say you'd never leave your child in a hot car, no, it can happen. Cars get hot fast, and kids can be at risk in temperatures as low as 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Never happens. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a good little break there. Now, without further delay, let's continue this second episode of the Storytelling Podcast with How to World Build. Picking up where we left off, languages and communication is going to be the next thing that's needed for you when you're world building. Language is the voice of your world. It reveals culture, it reveals unity, and it reveals the division in your world. For some things to consider, unique languages, dialects, scripts, and runes will often help you out greatly when it comes to the languages and communications. How communication works across species and nations will also be a good thing to touch upon in your stories. Common greetings like slangs, insults, or battle cries could benefit in your story. How old languages can survive in spells, songs, or runes will also inform the reader or the viewer of how the language is universal in this specific story. Languages often shape the identity of the story. For example, a shared tongue can unite nations, while ancient ones can hide forgotten truths that they rather have kept secret. Now, moving on from that, this next part is optional, but you could choose to include magic or technology, if any, for your world building. Magic and technology can define what is possible in your world. They're engines of wonder and they're also engines of danger. Questions to define the power of these two would be, where does it come from? Does it come from nature, gods, science, or does it come from you, character that you have written? Who can access it? Is everyone able to access it, or only a chosen few? What are the costs and the limits to magic and technology? How does it heal or destroy? How does it create or corrupt? How do people react to it? With awe? With fear? With dependence? Whether it's spells, machinery, or ancient alien devices, every great power needs rules to it. Limits often make it believable, and consequences often make it meaningful. Now, the next thing for world building, now again, this one is also optional, but you could include the creatures and the races that are currently living in the world that you're building out. The living world is what makes it feel truly alive. So you're going to need to consider all forms of life that you're going to be seeing throughout the story. The types of life that you could consider in this world could be basic things like humans, elves, dwarves, orcas, or a custom-made race of whatever. Beasts, humans, kaijus, or biochemical monsters could be a good addition to it. Spirits, the undead, or divine beings could also fit well with the story that you're writing. Wildlife could also be unique to whatever world you're building out, so you could throw in some fantastical elements in there if you'd like. You're going to have to consider the relationships and dynamics, like how do races coexist, or how do they have conflict with each other? Are there ancient rivalries or alliances? And how are different species viewed politically or socially? The variety of life in your world defines the tone from gritty realism to a mythic adventure. Now, for the final topic that I will speak about for how to build worlds is you have to talk about the current conflicts and tensions that are currently happening in the world that you're writing. Every living world is in motion. Conflict usually gives it the pulse, the purpose, the drama that it needs for either the reader or the viewer to have their attention be held or get them hooked in. The possible sources of tension that you could include are things like wars between nations and species. You could have political betrayal, corruption, or a rebellion. There could be natural disasters, there could be plagues, there could be a magical decay if you are including magic into your story. You could have prophecies, chosen ones, or divine interventions. Moral conflicts could be progress versus tradition, or faith versus reason, and even freedom versus order. Conflict doesn't just drive the plot, it shows that your world values, fears, and dreams of something more. Even peace has its price whenever you're talking about that in a story, or whenever that is the theme of a story. Alright, everybody, with that said, that's going to conclude this second podcast episode on the Storytelling Podcast. In this podcast, we went into the world building aspects through my perspective, so to give you a little reminder of what we spoke about, we first went over the geography and the setting that you are going to have your world be set in. The second thing that we spoke about is the history and the lore that will be a part of your world. The third thing we spoke about was the culture and the society that you'll have your world and character set in. Then we moved on to the government and power systems that will be in place of your world, followed by the religion and the beliefs that are going to be a part of the world. Then the economy and the resources that will be featured in your world, which languages and which version of communication you'll be including in your world, magic and technology, if any, for your world, then the creatures and the races of your world that live in your world, and finally the current conflict and current tensions that are currently taking place in the world when you do start your story. To give you all a tease of the next podcast episode that I'm going to be doing for the Storytelling Podcast, it will be about how to continue a story. That one should be fun, and potentially that one might be the longest of these 3 podcasts that I will be doing this semester. In addition to that, there may or may not be a couple of people that will be included in that podcast other than me, but we'll have to see. This has been the Storytelling Podcast Episode 2 by Sebastian on how to world build. The Storytelling Podcast has been a production of KWDC 93.5 LPFM, Delta College Radio. This program is made possible by listeners like you. Programming is produced by the students, staff, and faculty of San Joaquin Delta College's Digital Media Department and supported by the Delta College Department of Arts and Media, the Career, Technical Education, and Workforce Development Office, and the State of California. Thank you for listening.